Dan, welcome, Tasty Humans, first episode. I'm glad you're
I
here.
like the name, actually.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Are you a Tasty Human?
I'm not sure about that.
We're going to find out. We're going to find out. But one thing straight off the bat is that the idea for the podcast is it's super raw, super honest. So
Yep.
one thing I do actually have to confess to everybody is that this is about a car show, you know, Offset, that we're doing at Media One Hotel. And this is this weekend, but we don't know if we're going to actually get this out before the show. So instead of trying to talk about a show that's coming up, and you might get this podcast after that, then just for transparency, we don't know when you're actually going to hear this, whether it's before or after the show. So I think that saves us from making any unnecessary comments later on that might make people think, hang on a minute, these guys have got no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So I think my first question is, and the best place to start is just why? Why does somebody want to do custom car shows?
In the Middle East.
In the Middle East.
I'd much rather do it somewhere else. I'm not sure.
Where else would you do it?
That's a bold statement. No, I mean, I think like somewhere where you can potentially make money out of it or a living out of it. In this region, it's very new, like everything else. You know, it's a young country. So, and the reason I do it is just passion, number one. And I've been doing it now probably properly since 2017. And I haven't really made any money at all out of it. But that's because this is, we try and do something different, number one, to what other car events will happen here. But I still actually don't know anyone that's making really good money from car events here.
And how is that translating to this version of Offset then, from last year? So what have you, like, what's going to be the biggest differences, I think?
Well, the major difference this year is we're trying to sell tickets. So we are selling tickets.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I've ever done a ticketed event. But a close friend of mine who runs probably the biggest community-based car event here did something very recently in January of this year. So he was kind of the first person to do it, and it worked well for him. But he actually charged the car owners.
Okay.
And not the people that entered the venue were charged, I think, a minimal fee of 5 dirhams because it was a public park and the government kept that money. So we're doing things differently.
No.
We're not charging the car owners because we're very selective of the cars. So I think if you're selective, like if I'm asking you to bring your car or you're entering your car and you're lucky enough to get selected, I don't feel like you should pay. And because we don't have lots of cars, you wouldn't make much income stream from that.
How many cars are coming?
So it's a good question, actually, because I was working on this last night. We have, I think, like 101, 102. So it's limited. It's not a big car event, but I guarantee you the range of cars that will be at that event and the styling of cars is very, very different. It's not a volume-based show. It's all about curated and putting cars in the correct positions to take great photos or be able to post something great on Instagram.
And is that something that, like you said, is different to the other shows, you know?
Yeah, very, very different. You know, the old school shows that we're here, cars just get parked in a line.
Yeah.
And for me, with my background of running car culture, which is we go to events and cover events or motorsport events, local builds. If you can't take a great photo, then why, I go to the event. Maybe I'll travel to Abu Dhabi for an event. So it's a little way to drive. I spend a day there. If you can't get great content, why should I come? We live in a generation where everyone wants to see pretty content on Instagram, TikTok. And if you can't make that content, then for me, the event's not successful. And I've always seen it like that. And then I look at other events. I'm fortunate enough to travel and go to a lot of other car events around the world. And that's how they set up there.
What other ones you've been to? Like what's your inspiration? Like what's the best one?
Funnily enough,
Offset, which is obviously the best one.
Funnily enough, the two biggest shows that I feel are great, both of the guys that ran those have judged our show in the past.
Oh, that's cool.
So one of them's Ultrace, which is in Poland, which I've been going since 2018, and it's changed. It's got so big. It is probably the most.
Wow, you wouldn't peg Poland
no.
as like, custom car capital of the world almost.
And this is
you'd
like
almost, you'd almost go down the opposite route.
Yeah, but it's central. So like, they get people from all around Europe. So it's the best cars in Europe, and it becomes a thing of like you're driving your car to the event, and these cars are kind of like very, very different. The theme that we go through, there's a word that I hate that people use. It's called stance. Okay. Now basically it comes back from the old Volkswagen days, and I believe Volkswagen guys were the first people to do it, where they basically put the car as low as possible and they fit the wheels in a certain way so everything looks really, really nice. So it's purely visual, and that kind of styling has grown with social media. So social media has exploded. Now, if you have 1,000 horsepower car, you can't really, if it's parked, you can't see it's fast unless you see the engine bay, right? So you'd have to be doing something stupid, and you can't do that on a public road. You have to do it on a racetrack. And
also because of how low it is.
Yeah, so this is like, if you see 1,000 horsepower car, it can just look normal in some ways. Yeah. But if you see a car that's low or on air and has like crazy wheels on it, that's very visual.
So you know what, and we had this conversation actually earlier about the VW festivals.
Yeah,
Bug Jam, Beetle Bash at Santa Pod Raceway, which I went to in 93, 94 and 95.
Yeah.
And I had a number of friends that had Beetles, and they were constantly lowering them, and they're getting lower and lower and lower. But what is, I remember, because I was so young, I was like 17 at the time, and I didn't really understand it. Like, what are they doing to lower a car?
There's actually
and also, why would you do it?
Yeah, like a lot of people believe they don't drive that great low because you are changing components, or you're basically lowering the suspension.
Right.
But you can make a car still drive great if you're on a flat surface. These guys are putting just into suspension like 50, 60,000 dirhams just to make it work. Some's even more, depending on the car that it is. And a lot of it's custom work. So the whole idea is let's get the car as low as possible. Or a lot of them are like on air suspension. So you park the car, you press a button, and it just drops to the floor.
Oh, right, okay.
So, and we have lowriders as well, which is, a similar kind of idea as well, right? Where
are you gonna have cars that offset? Because I wasn't I wasn't there last year. But obviously I'm gonna be here, this weekend or last weekend, depending on when this comes out. But are you going to have the suspension cars that bounce?
Yeah, so there's two.
Awesome.
And they're like really awesome. Rare here. And I think one of them will probably try and bounce his car in the show, but they break a lot. So
I was going to ask,
They, this guy Abdullah that owns it's a Lincoln Continental, he's breaking it every weekend, and he's having to fly parts in from America just to get it to work. So I hope he's at the show. There was nothing that happened last weekend, but 2 weekends ago there was a big event and he was bouncing and it broke. So
I should laugh.
But it happens.
But it almost like you always go, well, you deserve it. Almost, when you get in the car.
It's a part of the culture. This, and also the guys that own these cars. This is their life. It's part of their culture. Driving a lowered car, you have to understand. It's probably not for everyone because it is tricky. You have to kind of miss potholes. You can't go over speed bumps very well.
My mates were the same. Like we're down the roads and everything. They're constantly left, right over this. The drains, speed bumps were an absolute nightmare.
Yeah. So, but it's a culture.
But it looked cool.
And it's big. And social media has kind of like propelled it even further forward, because when I first moved to the UAE 16 years ago, there was there might have been some, but it was definitely not on a large scale. And even still today, it's a very small scale. We actually have people coming from Saudi, Bahrain, Qatar, and Oman. And because the community is still growing, we know all those guys anyway. I've known them for a long, long time, because when they see your car on Instagram, they're like, oh, my car's the same. So they reach out to you. And then.
So I was going to ask, how do you select?
So we actually put up a form where people have to apply. So they will fill out a Google form and attach images of their cars. But I would like to say 85-90% of the cars we know anyway.
Okay.
So and we're choosing the best of those cars because we have limited space, and the way we arrange and lay out the cars. I don't know how many parking spaces there are on P5, 6, and 7, but we're only going to use there'll be 100 cars, if that.
Yeah.
So there could be 200 spaces, but we are using those spaces to full effect.
Yeah, because there's a lot more going on. There's the cars, there's Red Bull simulators. We have a little bit of a plug now. Do you know what I mean? You know, food and beverage, DJs, dancing, skateboarding.
Yeah.
I mean, but one thing I want to ask, when they send you the cars and you say no, how do they handle the rejection?
Not very well. And we don't really.
I thought you were going to go, no, they're fine.
Do you know what? I think it's pretty bad, but we actually don't say no. We just don't reply. So what we do is we send out the successful emails to the successful people. But the other thing is as well, and some of the cars are not bad, but like we're trying to curate it. We don't want too many of the same car. We don't want too many of the same color. So we're trying to pick the best of the best. So there is kind of like a backup list, a reserve list, and we will reach out to those people. But so I've been running this show now since 2017, I think, but under a different name. When we actually moved to P7 last year, we changed the name because we're able to do more, bring in the street dancing, the graffiti, which we couldn't do before because we didn't have a venue that suited it.
What venues were you at?
So solely Dubai Autodrome, and we still have a great relationship with them.
No, that's cool.
They support us fully still. And we actually used to do the event inside the grandstand because visually it looked great and it had that concrete kind of like urban vibe, but they wouldn't let us spray graffiti on the walls.
Yeah.
We couldn't we couldn't do F&B there properly. Actually, it's the biggest bane of my life, F&B, because we didn't have the power requirements, like it's not easy.
I do it for a living. Do you know what I mean? It's not easy.
So how P7 came around was I actually sat with Mark. At one point, I wanted to move my business more into F&B. Well, I actually do the part that makes money. And my wife knew Mark from years ago from a British business meetings or something.
Yeah.
So she said, listen, reach out to Mark. He's a good guy. So I reached out to him and said, listen, I just want to know how the F&B industry works here. So I sat down with him. He gave me some great advice. And my WhatsApp profile image is carculture.ae. And at the end of the meeting, he said, listen, I've wanted to do a car show here. Come and show me the venue. And funnily enough, I didn't directly reach out, but when I was running the previous event, I had someone reach out to Media One to find out how much it would be to hire the venue. And I think it was quite expensive. I can't remember what the price was.
That sounds like Mark,
yeah. So, but, so then, and he said, why don't we look at the venue? And I was like, well, I know the venue, but let's go and have a look at it now. And he was like, do you want to do it? And at that point, I think I had a verbal agreement from Morass, and they're not the easiest to work with, to do an event at one of their venues.
Yeah, no. I know.
And I think I remember, I think it was something like the 30th of December, I verbally agreed to Mark to go, let's do the event. And then I think we had like 6 weeks to kind of do it. But finding a venue here to spray on the walls, because we do live graffiti. You already have graffiti on the walls. But Mark is kind of like, just do it wherever you want.
Yeah.
And I don't have to chase food vendors. You just handle the food.
Yeah.
I think we're the first community-based event to ever have alcohol at it as well, which when I travel to different events around the world, I get to drink alcohol at those. And, a lot of people will just leave their cars at the event and they'll drink and they'll get a cab and stay in a hotel. For me, that's a huge part of enjoying the day out, is having a few drinks.
It's a festival. It's a day,
So, and no one still has tried to do that here because it is hard. But finding a venue where someone just goes, yep, I'll handle all of that, and we can get permits for live performances, I think has really changed. Everyone was pretty shocked. They understood what car culture, as a car culture event, what you would get. So like those high-end cars, they're laid out very, very nicely, super selective. But I don't think they were expecting what we always wanted to do was have, live performances, have street dancing, have graffiti, have skating. We never had the size venue to allow that. And, for someone to actually go, in this region, you can do what you want because of the amount of red tape that you have to go through with other venues. It's so hard.
100%. One of the, obviously I work there, but one of the greatest things about Media One is that we can essentially make very short decisions. If we want to do something, we can do it. It's not a giant hotel chain that goes through numerous amounts of red tape, all
So for
fair play to them,
This weekend, the prime example, we just came and shot, a short video for some promo. To do that anywhere else, that would take me probably 4 weeks to get the permits.
100%.
So, it is very, very easy to activate in this venue.
So what you're saying is we're very good to work with.
Yeah, mostly.
Oh, bravo. We do try.
Ask me next week.
Yeah. Or last week.
Yeah.
So listen, what's the most expensive car that is at Offset?
So confirmed for this year it's a Pagani BC Roadster. I think it's one of 5.
What does that mean? I ain't got a clue.
You know what, I it's going to sound strange. I work for the guy that owns it, and I don't particularly like it. I don't like that scale of car, but it's kind of like, even money can't buy you that car. You kind of like have to be on a list to get it.
What's it worth? Or can you not?
So you can't put a value, because these cars, I think he was under a contract. I'm pretty sure he paid $5 million for it.
Okay.
So, but the problem is, you can't just buy that car. So there's a lot of wealthy people who want to buy those cars. So if he was to sell it, I'm not sure what price it would be. I'm sure they've transacted at 15, 16, 17, $20 million, because they just don't. And then if you have one that's very tastefully built, like this is like black, and it's all out of carbon fiber.
Okay.
So it's I think in my eyes, it's a work of art. It goes beyond an actual car you drive on the road.
So is it a specific design? Like, is it like designed by one singular individual for him and it was built?
Yeah.
Or is it like the Bugattis where they'll make a certain amount of them and then that's it, and they increase in value because it's limited edition?
So it's levels above a Bugatti, because this is personally spec'd for you. So you choose everything. I've seen the PDF of when it was spec'd, so I've been through all of that, and it's actually designed and built by a guy called Horatio Pagani, and he designed, because I don't really deal with these cars, but I think he designed the Countach or some of the early Lamborghinis. Okay. So he used to.
They were the
good
ones as
well.
Yeah.
And this is a work of art. I appreciate it. Would I ever, if I had that amount of money, would I ever own one? Probably not, because they're not worth the money that it actually is. It's just I have one, and it's one of 5. And in that spec, it's probably one of 1. It's great. It will look great at the show. It will stand out because it will be the only car of that kind of caliber. It's not really what we would usually do. And this guy Rashid owed me a favor, and I was like, let's try it. Let's do something different, right? Because this hasn't been shown at any other car event in the UAE either. So I just wanted to try and do something different. And we'll see how it goes. There's also going to be a Lamborghini Diablo as well, SV, which I think is relatively rare, but it's not anywhere in that price range, but it's still way too much money.
So this thing's going to stand out.
Yes,
massively.
Massively.
The minute you see it, you're going to go, wow.
But it will also be weird to see it amongst the type of cars that I like and the styling. These low cars. This is still incredibly low, because in general, the lower the car is within reason, the better it looks. Why do you see like all hypercars and supercars are low? They handle better, they look better. It's how you make a car look better. We have a Toyota Yaris that's coming to the event.
Okay. Sorry.
So you've got a Toyota Yaris, and then you have like a.
And so what have they done to the Yaris, or should everyone just come and find out? Or,
it's just wheels and when I say it's just wheels and suspension, it sounds so easy, but it's really not. It's the way that the wheels fit when you lower the car. It's actually quite an art. It is an art form. It's a form of expression. And that's why it's still not massive here in terms of there's lots of cars, because it's hard to do. But you can do it to any car you really want. That's the beauty of it. And I like the fact that we're going to have a Yaris, and then we're going to have some very, very expensive JDM cars, and then you have the one unattainable car that you can't really own.
So when you actually decide to bring these cars in, how does that process work? Who is shipping the car over? You guys, or the? So are you working on a basis where if you selected for the show, they almost have to be grateful and they foot the bill?
Yes.
Or do you?
Yeah.
So then how does that work with liaising with certain clients to get it done? Because you work with some very high profile people.
Yeah. It's a bit of a nightmare. Everyone's different.
Who's the most different person that you've worked with? I didn't want to use the word nightmare. You know what I mean? But I've just used the word nightmare.
So I don't want to single out which countries, but there's some countries in the GCC that definitely don't understand my culture too much. So I'm a very like during loading on the Friday, I'm very specific. Some people don't like to be parked. They want to be parked here, there, you know, like, and they don't understand that we choose where you park because it's part of the show.
Yeah.
So sometimes that can be a bit of an issue, and it definitely has been in the past when I had a different business partner that maybe didn't handle that situation the best because there was a lot of Arabic speaking, and you know, I can understand Arabic, but not to the extent of that. And also Saudi dialect is very different to Emirati dialect as well. But yeah, it's tough. And actually, it used to be worse before, rejecting people's cars or just not replying to their, you know, sending them an email to say they're in. But now people understand that if you're coming to a car culture event, this is the, you know, the level of cars that we want. Whereas before, people didn't really understand it. So this is probably the first year where we haven't had really, really random cars, like cars that really don't fit the show, that are a different custom car kind of styling, or they're people that like to go to these car shows where you just rev the engine, shoot massive flames out the back of it. We don't do that. We're a family-based show. You know, one of the biggest things is a lot of my friends now have children.
Right.
If they want to be able to go somewhere at the weekend, they've got to take the kids, you know, to get out of it. So, you know, this is great. They're like, oh, we can get a taxi to the event. We can have a few beers. The wife doesn't really know. Take the kids with me. And the kids are happy, right?
Yeah.
You know, so... you know,
I know now.
Yeah, but you know, but shows in Europe are the same. You need to be family friendly.
Of course, yeah, especially car shows because it's cars.
Yeah,
you know, kids love cars.
And I went to I used to go to car shows when I was a kid as well. You know, that's how I got into it. You know, a lot of my family are very, very into that, and you don't want to go. There's a lot of. There used to be so many more, and I used to go to a lot of them as car culture just to see it. But so rowdy, doing burnouts, donuts, it's proper antisocial. But if you've got a child there, they don't want to hear this, like, you know, we call it anti-lag, where someone just sits on basically holds down the throttle and it just shoots flames out the back of the car.
Yeah, I mean, it's okay once, maybe.
For me, it's not even okay. Like, no, I just don't allow it.
You know, I kind of enjoy that kind of aggressive side of it, where you do see somebody show off how powerful their vehicle is. Having said that, once you've done it once, you know, it's a bit like, all right, mate, do you know what I mean? We know.
and do you know,
plus the flames could hurt someone.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
And I saw, I'm willing to state this. I'm not going to say which show it was, and it was at the Autodrome this weekend or just recently. And there was a video.
So not narrowing it down.
Yeah, but it wasn't the Autodrome, and you know, they just dry hire the venue to someone else. But there was a picture of it's a video of a car sitting there doing this, shooting flames out the back of it. And what happens is you're just on the throttle all the time, and occasionally a flame will shoot out the back, and like a child ran behind the car. Luckily, there was no flame, and someone grabbed them and pulled them back. And I was like, it's a disaster waiting to happen, you know, like big disaster. So yeah, we don't do that with Offset. That's not what we do. There are shows here that do that, but they're
it's an art show, isn't it?
Yes, basically, and that's why we have
an art show.
You know, graffiti, because that kind of goes hand in hand with the culture, right? You know, it's that street kind of culture. Same with the skateboarding and the street dancing.
So this is something you're very into, isn't it? Like the whole urban scene. Like, so how did you start car culture then? What was the idea behind that?
So going back to the UK, I've always grown up around cars. When I was at university, I had old Volkswagens, and I probably had 3 then at the time. Even at university, a bit like wheeler dealer, kind of like buying, selling, trying to get a better car.
Right.
And I used to be on a forum that was really big called Edition 38, and we used to look after kind of like the Surrey area. So like I would get together a whole load of guys and we'd drive to a car show together, and we used to just do things together as a group. So then, you know, I had a little bit of a status on a forum, so I used to post a lot. And then when I moved to Dubai, I don't know where I was, somewhere like Quain, or I think maybe it wasn't a car show, but I found some like old Datsuns, which we don't really get in the UK, and I posted a picture on this forum, and everyone went, "Well, this exists in Dubai." You know, the first day I came to Dubai, I probably saw like 4 458s and a couple of, I can't even remember what the Lamborghinis were at the time. you know, and that's like when you think Dubai, you just think like supercar, hypercar,
Yeah.
and everyone.
Rich.
Yeah, and a lot of people.
It's kind of true.
It is kind of true, and people will come here, and all they'll do is like big influencers will come here and just post pictures of those cars, and it still happens every week. But there's a lot of people that don't care about those cars. They want to see like the real culture, and the real culture here is very, very different. So that was when I first arrived. I had a busy job, and I was like, I really want to build a website to show the world what we have here.
What job did you have?
I was working in events then, yeah.
Oh, so this wasn't the one we were talking about before.
Well, when I first arrived, I
let's
was
not
working
go
in
down that
events.
road.
Yes. 7 years doing that, and then I got a boring office job, and it was when I got the boring office job that I had the time to launch a website, learn how to use a camera. I kind of knew from the previous job camera systems and the basis of video and, you know, audio. So yeah, just was like, right, I'll make a website and I'll start posting images and write about an event or write about a certain person's build. And at one point, the website was, I would say, super successful. There wasn't many people doing that in this region. And definitely when someone from outside saw it, it became big because they were like, this is really what happens in the UAE, not what we see on, you know, on social media. And actually social media was kind of growing at the time. Mm-hmm. So we then started posting a lot to Instagram, Facebook, and now I'm fortunate.
Did it really help you? Like, did you catch that early wave where?
Yes, but then numbers, if you actually look at our numbers, they're probably not as great as what they could be, because if I was doing hypercars, supercars, it gets serious numbers because it's still different.
Yeah, go on. Sorry.
But early days definitely, like, and it taught me a lot because I understand the platforms and they've changed so much. And now I actually create content for other people and manage their Instagram pages or do, you know, create automotive adverts for other companies. So
which one do you think is the best? The platforms? For transparency, I'm like, I don't know much. I don't subscribe too much social media. I'm not a marketing or type person like that. So
previously, if you wanted traction, TikTok. But we don't post to TikTok. I'm not really a big fan of it. I still think it's not the best platform.
Why not?
There's a lot of garbage on there, but there's a lot of garbage in general. But I think so an algorithm is what suggests you what to look at. And I think it takes a long time for the algorithm to get it right, in my eyes. It pushes you a load of random stuff. And I'm also still quite an image, I like looking at just images, not always videos. Mm-hmm. But we still have great succession on Instagram here. We understand it. It's still great for this region. And it's funny because I don't know. I think like Facebook in the UK is probably still really relevant. But here, Facebook isn't relevant in my eyes. But then there are different nationalities that actually use Facebook here extensively still. So, but primarily all of our marketing campaigns through Instagram, same as last year. But all of my work exists really in Instagram, maybe YouTube adverts. So yeah, I still think Instagram for me in this region is the biggest platform. I know we have figures to kind of back that up as well. Kids are using TikTok, but they're not purchasing stuff yet, not purchasing cars in my eyes.
Yeah, they're just using it for let's all dance about and do routines and do funny stuff and.
Which it's
as far as I'm aware, anyway.
We're not allowed to swear, so I'm not going to swear. But it's not a good. It's not a.
Well, we can, but the minute we do, only about 4 people are going to see it.
So I don't rate TikTok. I rate take for example, recently over the last 3 years, Porsche has grown massively on Instagram.
Okay.
Before, Porsche was never a trending brand on Instagram. It's huge now, and I kind of do a lot of work around Porsche. I've done work for Porsche Middle East. I don't do work for them anymore, but I still do a lot of work around that with companies that are either servicing, modifying, or, you know, track driving Porsches. So I do a lot of work with them. It's very easy to get results. Whereas it used to be Japanese cars, which is kind of what I'm into. So previous to that, if you posted a picture of a Japanese car, it would always do well. But at the moment, Porsche have kind of taken over that market. And I think TikTok is still, JDM is bigger than Porsche, but Porsche are kind of getting a little bit onto TikTok. I could speak hours about car brands and social media. That's probably not what we're
fair
here
enough.
For, right? Like,
one thing I do want to ask you though, you said hypercar and supercar.
Yep.
Like, so I don't know much about cars. I never have. Like, I was quite into motorbikes and stuff like this, but never really a car enthusiast. But what is the difference between a hypercar and a supercar?
So again, people will probably have their own kind of take on that, but the Pagani that's coming to the show, that's known as a hypercar.
All right.
I don't even know if a Chiron probably, which is Bugatti, would be.
So a hypercar is above a super, basically.
Yeah. So
okay, fair enough. I just wanted to know.
It's really funny. Your supercar would be your average. There's a lot of like average Ferraris and Lamborghinis that we see here every day. They would be classed as a supercar. And then a hypercar is the rarer ones, and they do well on Instagram, I'll be honest. And there's an incredible amount of cars that fall into that bracket here, and I'm fortunate enough to have seen, driven, and been around them. But you would never find any of that on my personal Instagram ever.
Yeah, because you're not really into this, are you? You're more rooted in, I suppose, what would be the right way to put it? It's being real.
Yeah.
Like, I was going to say the whole urban culture, the skating, the graffiti, these type of things, which is I suppose I wasn't really a skater, but I was really into the scene. You know, the hip hop, the graffiti, stuff like this when I was younger. And it's very honest. Yeah. It's a very roots driven kind of.
And this is a very fake place where you can pretend to be someone you're not, right?
It's you know what I mean? I think Dubai there is a lot of fake here, 100%, you know. But I think it's growing so much that now, especially like I feel this way about P7, which is now I think that it's got what it's known for, and now there's kind of, like say, that the underground scene is almost starting to come up and surface because it's big enough now to actually have this. I mean,
so if you're going back, slightly off topic, if you're going back to, I can relate this to music because that was a big part of mine. There was never, I feel like there was very limited great underground nights or big acts being promoted or happening here, where that's kind of over the years has really grown now, and there feels like there is a real scene and a lifestyle around that. And I think that's definitely happening with cars now as well, right? And it's such a young country where you still have to remember that, you know, the country is really, really young. And the whole skating generation, one of the guys that is going to be running the skate section, I think he was born and bred here. You know, and we were talking that there's so many people that have been big in the skate scene that have come in and left because it's a very transient place. But now people are spending a lot more of their life here. People are trying to settle down. It's much easier to settle down here now.
They're making it a lot more accessible for people to come and stay, which is really cool.
And that translates into having one of these cars. If you're building, these cars are, so let's say some of these cars might be like 150,000 dirhams to purchase, but they'll put 150,000 dirhams into modifications or 200,000 dirhams. If you're only going to be here 2 years, and it takes a long time to build these cars, you're not going to spend that money because you're like, I don't know if I'm going to stay here. But now people are like living here for a long period of time, so these cultures are growing. You know, like.
So how is the skate scene growing? Like there was the competition, wasn't there? I think
Red Bull, I think
Red Bull did the Olympic qualifiers or something like this down on Dubai Harbour. We had a lot of the skaters staying in the hotel. Like,
okay, so the guy Maysam that's going to run the event here, I think he probably would have had a negative thought on that because I don't think they reached out to the community and had anyone from the community activate.
Really?
Or
so
do
they
that.
just brought in. They just used it as that kind of typical Dubai thing, which was, look, we're doing it in Dubai. Yeah. I mean, I kind of do know that it was. I think it was supposed to be in Sharjah.
Yes.
And then they had to move it, so I wouldn't sort of claim that it was almost like a PR stunt. But it's weird to think that they didn't bring any local skaters in.
So I think that's the case for a lot of the things that happen here. Is that it's like, and I see it because they go to so like let's say an events company will just. We'll activate this. They don't go and look at the culture because it is kind of hard to find here. You have to dig into the roots. We've done a lot of stuff, and we've been lucky to do a lot of stuff as car culture, where someone's gone, actually, especially when we had the website active, it was quite easy to find us because everyone Googles stuff. So, you know, we've done a lot of jobs where we've kind of brought in cars and done activations for someone else that it is the real culture. But I know a lot of these agencies or event companies, it's hard to find the actual culture here. Even these skate guys, we actually used someone different last year, and they were commercial. But I didn't know the skate scene well enough, and because we did things so short term, this year, that was one of the things I wanted to fix. I wanted to make sure that we had someone that was actually, you know, cultured as part of the culture.
Yeah.
And they're actually going to skate
That's
on
real,
a car this
you know.
year as well.
They're going to skate on a car.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so that'll be interesting.
Whose car?
Do you know what? The funny thing is,
Is it the drift car? Is it our drift car? Or?
So no, it's what we call a donor car, and the company Morney that are sponsoring the show, it's the owner of Morney's car. So he's had to buy, it's like an old classic Mercedes. He's had to buy a new running Mercedes, not a brand new, but it's like a 2007 AMG. I actually don't know what I think it's an E-Class. So he's buying that, taking the engine and transmission out of it, and putting it in a classic car. So it's like, they call it resto mod, basically.
Okay.
So he doesn't need the shell. So we're literally driving it in, working, and it will end up being skated on. So it will get
Damaged.
Yeah, properly damaged, yeah.
Did you used to skate?
No, but always kind of like, oh, that's funny. Actually, tried to when I was younger, probably around the age of 13, 14, you know, I was always that one with skaters. We were kind of like the outcasts at school. And, you know, I was always into electronic music, and I was hanging around with guys that were kind of in like, kind of like, I don't know, it was like punk kind of like, it sounds bad, but it was like commercial Green Day stuff at the time, whatever Green Day's a class.
No, I get that. Yeah, that's where it's not really grunge or thrash
but
or
when
punk.
you're 14,
it's just,
you think it is,
like,
right?
what was the other one? Blink 182 and Weezer and stuff
Yeah.
like that. You're like, yeah, no.
So same.
You're not Nirvana.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
So, and I was around a bunch of guys. I got on really great with these guys, but I was always like the electronic kind of guy that like. But we tried to skate quite a lot. I think I could skate downhill fine and not fall off, but landing an
I don't
ollie,
think I could
no.
do it now. No, I couldn't skate. Do you know what one thing though? I mean, I always think that whenever you see it, whenever I see it, I used to watch the X Games a lot. I still watch it now if I can, even though it's like 5 minutes if I'm flicking through channels, you know. But I still think that it's one of the most underrated things in the world of what could, I mean, is it sport or whatever? But when you watch what they're doing, especially like street skating, the technical ability to do it, and also the level of damage they can take if they get it wrong is
massive. Yeah,
you know, you look at it and I just think it really doesn't get the credibility that it kind of deserves on a technical level. It's amazing what they do.
And I think these guys struggle here, especially because they have skate parks, and even Maysam said to me the skate parks here are not really that well designed because they're just built to look nice. Very different to like something in, you know, LA, right? Like
that's actually built to skate on.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So and Maysam actually we went to an event of his probably about 6 weeks ago now in Dira, where there's a place where they were literally skating around a fountain.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
And it's the only place that you can do it because there's no security. It's open, so you can't get in trouble. But you think trying to do skating anywhere else here, you get kicked out straight away. Security come. It's the same when we try and take photos of cars in certain areas. We get kicked out. I've got in trouble before, had SD cards taken away from me. Emirates ID copy taken multiple times.
But you know what? That's kind of what it's about to a certain degree. I remember that skating was always like, I think one of the big things in skate world and the BMX world and everything like this was, could you go and skate on that rail?
Yeah,
could you go and actually come across that section of that park or roadway or something like this? And if the police were chasing you, you'd almost won.
There's a famous English BMXer, I'm not going to name him, I don't particularly agree with what he does, especially now, who came to Dubai, did a stunt on a BMX bike, got kicked out. And I don't know if he grew or if he was already big on YouTube, but that grew his kind of, I don't know if it grew his career, but it elevated his career. But he's now back in Dubai doing stuff that I don't necessarily agree with, trying to live that social media life, you know, like I'm doing the Dubai thing.
So he's sold out basically.
Yeah, I think so. And I really question what he does as well, but you know, and that's definitely not what I would do. I get given cars, or I'm not going to say which cars. I'm fortunate enough to drive a lot. And
how many cars have you got?
It's a real good question because I sold one recently, so I don't know what you can't kind of forget. And I've got project cars.
Forget how many cars you've got.
Yeah, I think it's either 10 or 11. The wife might know better than me. Yeah.
And what are they quickly like? What's the range like?
So the majority of them are Japanese and Nissans. That's my biggest thing. I'm known for that. I've got a R32 GTR, which is kind of like people know me for that car, and it's styled in the way that the show cars would be as well that we have at our show. That's pretty iconic. So I have two of those. I have one one modified, one completely stock, which doesn't get driven. I just don't like it, but I got offered it so cheap at the time, and these cars have like gone crazy in value, so I've held on to that. I've got a 76 Datsun, which is also in the same sort of styling. And I've got an R34 sedan, which is like a newer version of the GTR that I have, same styling. I have a DC5, which is an old Honda, which is like a boy racer car. Always wanted one when I was a kid, so I just bought one 2 years ago, and I love it. Got a
Do you boy race in it?
I drive it like an idiot.
So for people that don't understand the term boy racer, which I certainly do,
Yeah.
like what is that?
So I mean, like,
What does that mean?
okay. Do you know what? Because cars have got a lot faster these days. This is old. It's not actually that fast. So you can drive it with aggression, and it takes a long time to go over the speed limit. But yeah, you mean for me, I just kind of like abuse the car.
Abusing the car on public streets, basically, and it's not even a very good car. And that was like the
But do you know the value of them
racer.
have gone up so much recently because that was a car you wanted as a kid, and now you have money, and there's hardly any of them around. People are fighting over them, you know. So the effect of old Japanese cars have kind of gone up massively in value. And I have a brand new one, which they cost like 205,000 dirhams, brand new, and that. They were never that expensive, like, you know, and they haven't released a new one in this region for years. I think the last one was like 98,000 dirhams when I first came here. So, you know, car prices are silly now. And I've got a big truck that I drive around in daily, which is a Raptor. I've got another old Honda, which is in restoration.
Why? What
I don't know, because I was Volkswagen,
right?
And this country that's really blurred my mind. When I was growing up as well, we hated Japanese cars. I used to go to an event called No Rice. We would call Japanese cars Ricer cars, right? And they would come and cause all issues. They were like, Japanese cars were the ones where you were driving them like an idiot, like, and they were like making loud sounds. And the Volkswagen scene at that point had just started this thing called stance, which we now like, of lowering cars.
What sort of years are this? What's the time?
So this was before I moved out here, so probably like 05 to 08 or maybe 04 to 08 when I was in Guildford. And the cruise was called No Rice. It's massively famous. And there'd almost be fights because you wouldn't allow the Jap guys in.
One thing I actually wanted to ask you, actually, speaking of fighting, you know what I mean, which is because I think it's like my sort of closing question, my final, because we have a great conversation, love this. We could talk all afternoon. But I think that a number of people won't want to listen to us doing that. But one thing is that, you know, how much influence has the Fast and the Furious and like Need for Speed and Need for Speed Underground? Because I must have been mid-20s when Need for Speed Underground came out. Underground 2 on the PlayStation 2.
PlayStation's huge.
I played that game to just immeasurable levels, you know. And you could customize the cars, you know. So the thing I want to ask is that how much has that influenced, is it the car scene in general? Was it a point that everyone just went from this to now?
I'll tell you how it is, right? So you would have played, there's multiple games when you were growing up on PlayStation that have affected, well, you'd be like, what car were you using? So a lot of people are like, one of the most iconic cars back then was like a GTR, like an R34 GTR, R33, R32. So as a kid, you're playing that, right? But you can't afford the car because you don't have any money. When you eventually get to the age of like, well, now I can afford a car, these cars are not common anymore. They were like, you know, not poorly built, but they're, you know, they've rusted out, you know, they've been abused. They're very, very hard to find. So when you eventually have the money to buy one, they're not like you know, a 30, 40,000 dirham car anymore. They're 150 to 500, 800,000 dirhams. Some of the R34s are crazy. So, you know, growing up, you're like, I've always wanted this car. Now I have the money to buy it. You know, like the prices are just crazy. So, and then there's this nostalgia now where the younger generation are also seeing all these old games, and, you know, Fast and the Furious still goes on, so people are going back and watching the first few ones. And they realise that these are the most iconic cars, and car manufacturers don't build cars like this anymore. You know, we're going to a very digital era where these were 100% analog. So it has driven it. You know, I drive some of my cars, go into a car wash, and I'm like, we've got kind of like 8, 10-year-old kids going, oh, wow, that's an R34. And I'm like, wow, you understand that? you know.
And is there a scene here? You know, because everyone thinks from the outside looking in, Dubai super polished, a little bit fake, as we were saying.
Yep.
Everyone's just rich and wandering around on the beach with their gold chains and bottles of whatever. But is there like an underbelly of a proper Fast and Furious scene where there are car clubs, car gangs,
Yeah.
racing quarter miles on the
Yeah.
streets, racing for each other's cars, fighting like?
So I've never seen
Is
someone racing for. I've heard of people racing for cars. Definitely cash. I know people that do it.
Yeah.
We definitely don't put ourselves in those situations. There's a lot of trash talking. I don't know anyone that's been physically harmed, but people here like to talk a lot. That happens. But then there's also the other side of it where you will, you know, and I actually, when people come to this region, big YouTubers, I've got to know quite a few of these people, and we will take them to like a private event. And this is how car culture kind of operates, our own events. I just ring my mates and we'll get together like 10, 15 cars, go and park somewhere and just chill for the evening.
But does like does like a rival gang turn up? You know what I'm getting at? Is that like obviously I'm not trying to force you to say.
Well, I can't name names, but
no. But it's, what I'm trying to say is that like, is it all done in good faith, or is there actually like let's say like gangs? You know what I mean?
Clubs that I've heard. I try and stay far away from car clubs, but one of the things is like, and I'm just going to use the Mustang Club as an example. They'll have a club. There'll be two people at the top. They'll fall out, and then they'll split and make their own clubs, and then they become clash.
Okay.
They won't go to the same events as each other, and we don't really have these people come to our events as such, but it happens, and it's more trash talking on social media. There is a story of a guy with an R34 that isn't necessarily a GTR that was having a very public spat with someone else with an Evo, I think. And that ended up in not fisticuffs, maybe it was a backhand slap at last exit. So actually, last exit in Al Qudra, that street, and I can say this now because it's kind of shut down and most people know about it, but that street was originally like one of the, probably 5-6 years ago, the street racing place to be.
Yeah, I used to live near there.
Yeah, so
and
you'll know.
And they are definitely roads that you can just blast down.
Exactly.
100%.
I'm not going to say where they are now.
Not that I've ever done it.
But it moves around, and that still happens. But I remember there was an incident. It was so public, it was on Instagram. And all of us were kind of like following it, watching it. And one of my friends was actually sat there where it all happened, and he didn't kind of realize what was going on. But there was a big shouting match. Maybe there was a couple of slaps and big group of people around. But, I know who these people are. Would they necessarily? They're definitely not cars that will come to our events.
So I don't need to get a load more security for the weekend.
No, I'm hoping we're good.
Or I didn't need all the security for the weekend because it was such a peaceful event. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
We do need someone around the expensive car. That's the
listen, we've got full-on meetings about this, and there's going to be a lot of protection. What a way to end! But listen, it's been great to talk to you about this, and definitely talk to you about it and record it because you're a very genuine character, and I really like that. And it's kind of what I want this podcast to be about, just real people talking about things they love. So and again, depending on what time we actually get this out, I'm really looking forward to the weekend. Or wow, wasn't that a great show? But so look, we'll definitely get you back on because I know through knowing you the way I do that there's a lot more to discuss around dance music, nightclubs, DJing, and loads of stuff like that. So I look forward to seeing you again, pal. Thanks for coming on.